Just to give an introduction of Dharma, so sustainability and buildings have been two large industries in itself, and we are at the intersection of these two. In the recent past, these two are becoming and have always become, in a few cases, a core guiding principle in designing new buildings today. We have a few projects we will showcase. We will talk about a few projects where sustainability is the core guiding principle when we are designing buildings. So, Dharma, we've been here for almost a decade, and we have worked with many industries in the last 10 years. We have integrated sustainability in all our work. But in the last 5 years, you could say that we have really developed a core expertise in building specificity, and we have worked with a lot of forward-thinking developers, architects, consultants. Some of you are in this room today, and we have integrated sustainability in some of those projects, and these projects are already existing and live today. And in the last decade, like I said, we have worked over 80 units square feet of built environment, and in that directly impacting from a carbon perspective, almost mitigation of 8 to million tons of carbon over the lifetime of these buildings. And last year, we have actually developed a MYP software tool. It's called SD Plus. SD Plus actually is for the entire ecosystem of your built environment, which is real estate developers, architects, and consultants. It makes integrating sustainability in your designs much easier, faster, more efficient, and definitely cheaper. So with that intention, we have developed those tools. At the end of the session, we will spend 10 minutes. We will do a demo of it. Not now, but at the end of the session. So you will also get a glimpse of what this tool is and how it can help you. Now I think we can start off with the panel discussions. So the first agenda on the item is the panel discussion. Welcome to Sriram for leading the panel discussion. And we also have two esteemed guests today. We have Mr. Suhail Rahman. He's the MD of CoEvolve Estates. He represents the developer community and Decode. And Ms. Meghana Dutta, she is the head of Decode. She represents the architect community. And so Sriram will go to the quick introductions.
Thank you first of all for making it on Saturday morning. I'll jump into it quickly. Sharat's told about us, and do talk to us a little more about what you want to know about Dharma and how we do. That is the aim. But at the same time, can we shed light on the problem of sustainability in built environment? That's the aim. I'm very excited to introduce Meghana and Suhail. Both of them I've known for a while. I'll quickly do an introduction from. I'll try to do the non-LinkedIn introduction, which you can always look them up online. Meghana is a Namur Bengaluru girl. She's studied here as an architect by education. Studied here, then went abroad, studied further. I had a great chat with her about how she looks at architecture, right? And she said architecture has to do a lot with gut. You have to feel for it. And I was talking to a couple of other architects who talk about architecture should make you feel better. And I love this. I do not see eye to eye with her on some of these ideas, maybe. But I love the idea that she comes the pedigree of her work speaks of the idea that architecture should be something you make somebody feel, and that emotion, that empathy. Now, why is this important in this context? Sustainability cannot be something which we could have solved with just some numbers or some ideas and some story. We've had these ideas for a long time. It won't work because we're not taking an approach which is different from a standard numbers. We need also empathy in that. And strong empathy-driven approach to how you design anything. from a piece of pen, electronic equipment to building is very powerful and very strong. In a body of work that shows, some of our most successful projects are like the planetarium, the new planetarium. If you've not visited, I highly recommend you should go to. Something she's done. I hope she'll shed light on that. So welcome. Thank you for coming. Suhail, again, Namuru man. I have lots of jokes offline I'll make about him, but I will tell you this much that I've known Suhail for 6-7 years now. I just worked together, we've become good friends. Comes with deep empathy and passion about solving climate change. But what he does though, he never drops the value what it can give to his customers. He's a real estate developer, MD of CoEvolve Estates. A trailblazer is what I would say. What comes from his upbringing and his way of living shows in the kind of work CoEvolve Estates does. He's smart enough to say that status quo does not work, and he's passionate enough to question and challenge the current norms. Thumb rule is not okay for him. I have a joke. I'm going to tell you this, and it will tell you a lot about Suhail. All of us have seen Tom Cruise movies, right? There's this famous thing about Tom Cruise. There was once a movie where, and I'm not comparing Suhail to Tom Cruise, please don't. But I'll tell you this joke. So Tom Cruise had to once shot. He had this crazy run of 4 minutes on top of these, somewhere in Netherlands, on top of a building, and he was walking on this. He had to run on this ledge for 4 minutes. And so he planned everything, and he called his special effects guy and said, I'm going to do this. And the special effect guy says, no, it cannot be done. And so Tom Cruise is explaining his whole story to somebody, right? He's all this passion, he's saying, I have to do this, I have to run for 4 minutes. My special effect guy comes and says, it's not to be done. I threw him out, I got a new special effects guy. And so Tom Cruise is not going to compromise. He'll throw the special effects guy out and get a new guy who actually agrees for it. I have sat in meetings where Suhail was willing to throw out structural engineers because they're not accepting to his embodied carbon reduction requirement, which is very rare. Yes, that's a comparison to Tom Cruise. It's over. So, thank you for coming. Like I said, please look them up on LinkedIn. Their body of work is incredible. Okay, the way I'm going to do, we were very particular about not having too many people here. That's when you can make it really interactive and effective. I'm going to ask them about some of their work, and I'll stop and we'll open it up for conversation. And then, of course, I have tons of questions to ask. But, I'd like to all to ask a lot more. So, Meghana.
I want to start with what does sustainability mean to you really? And how does that, you've had traditional architectural education, but then when you went abroad, you did study sustainable architecture and design and all. And it shows in the practice you do today in Studio Decode and other work you do. But what does it mean to you personally?
So I'll just give you a little background. So I think we came back around 2006. I was working in the US. Did my first, at that time, platinum rating and all was huge. This was in around 99 to 2000, 2009. It was huge over there. So was involved in the first platinum rated building in Boston, and that's where my eyes opened up in terms of what really certification is. Not what really green building was. I think green building we already knew, we already understood with this, climatology, vernacular. All those are just different words that we use for the same thing, right? And then I realized, okay, you have to have a certification to prove that your building is actually smart, right? So that's where his genius comes in. Because as an architect, you may design the best building, but unless you show the numbers, it doesn't work. So that's when the experience started, and then I was working and I said, this is not a place for me, US is not a place to come back to India because there's so much more to do over here. And then I realized, okay, sustainability, just wait for a green building is not enough. That's not really sustainable. Then we're not really using our skill as an architect to give back more in some sense. So I need to do a lot more because just maybe it's like 0.000% of a city or a landscape or whatever. So then I went back, that's when I went back to Harvard saying, this is not enough. Sustainability, that's where the meaning comes. I think it's beyond just buildings. It's a lot more to do about all the interconnections between business, between policy, between design, between just human emotions. Unless you get all these things together, you're not really promoting sustainability in the true sense. So that's what I did and came back. And that's when I started working more with the Dharma. Earlier also we were, but then it became a little more with the Dharma because it was more of a holistic approach sustainability about looking at water, the waste, looking at biodiversity. I think as an architect we know how to tie up all the resources together. And sustainability for me is really when I make a decision, am I really doing it right as a parent? Am I doing it right as a architect? I'm really doing it right as a citizen. If the answers are yes, then I think my decision is sustainable going forward. That's what it's.
I'm going to ask you about the green building also, but Suhail, what is sustainability? Me had you could kick off also. What is the definition of green building? Because and you have spoken. Is it certification? Is it net zero the new common thing everybody wants to say, or is it just water? Right? How do you look at it? But what does sustainability mean to you personally?
So when I started off on sustainable buildings 1 years back, it was a very simple definition for me. It's simply saving resources during construction. And once I had over post-construction, how does the community save? That was a simple definition. I think that still holds true. Over the last decade or so, I'm doing my 4th green building right now. And I've now added a layer of, with Sriram's push, carbon also into the mix. So that, okay, in addition to saving resources, you reduce your carbon impact outset. So that's a further addition to sustainable. Simplistically, it's just saving maybe water, energy, reducing your waste. That is the core of sustain. Coming to green buildings, it's an extension of that. The misconception is, unfortunately, you do a lot of greenery to green building over the last 10 years or so. It's slowly changing now. Just putting greenery probably makes it an unsustainable building. You really need to put your thought into what sort of greenery goes into a green building to reduce your water consumption and stuff. But again, I'm not a fan of rating systems, so to speak, because it's a lot size sensor. And in IGBC, what do we call it? There's nothing specific to a geography. Because if I go from Bangalore to Mysore, climate change, but it doesn't. It's not bit that way. So I recently had a lot of points, but when I select a project that I want a rating, I have to follow it because that's the only way I'm going to get the rating. So typically for a city like Bangalore, you don't need many of the norms that are relevant for a city like Delhi in terms of weather, conditions, etc. So the bond definition.
I want to over on that point though. How many architects here? Or we are good architects. SD dong dong. How many developers? And how many consultants who help developers and architects? Okay, decent mix, right? Which is what we want with the second part. But here's a question though. All of you practicing, that's why we're here in this space. What does rebuilding mean to you? Any good answer?
Yeah, so peak resource purchase and resource efficient during the life cycle. You kind of mentioned it later, but actually that's a very good definition. So certification is a great example why, like Suhail said, one of the challenge we have today is the definition of a green building. Over the past 15 odd years, the term green building, eco-friendly construction is there. Like Suhail said, a lot of developers have put some planting at the entrance and say it's a green building, right? And then my favorite example is whenever there's a project which is sustainable, I'll go and see some details. In their amenities, they'll write rainwater harvesting. That tells you their understanding of green building. First of all, rainwater harvesting is a law. Second, it's not an amenity. You can't equate it to a children's tote center, right? So this is the challenge we have. And it's not even their fault because how do you define green building, right? That's been a challenge. Like this gentleman has said, it is a resource consciousness is something to bring in. So I want to do one thing. Let's imagine what is a green building, and let's see in the life cycle of a project how does it come in, right? This definition became a big challenge. I'm not exaggerating. Exactly in this room, 6 months ago, I was a speaker, and I was asked, "What is it? What is a net zero building?" Now, net zero is also all of us know. Our great man has gone and committed that 2070 will be net zero as a country, we still don't know what is the definition of net zero, right? So we'll start saying, in the life cycle, especially when you take a project, right? The moment you get a piece of land, you will start thinking, I think I can make 200 apartments here, let's say, residential. At that time, what is the challenge? How do you look at it as this is the definition of a green building? Do you first of all think about it at the first?
I don't look at it from the perspective of green building, so to speak. I just look at what are the aspects that I can contribute to in reducing my carbon. Now, today that's what I look at. More than green, because I'm not looking at ratings anymore. So since I've done 3 of buildings, now I sort of, a building that I don't do a rating, I then pick and choose what really works for a city like Bangalore. That's the only stuff I'm going to implement in that project.
Right.
For example, in Bangalore, the most critical issue today is water.
Water, right.
So all of my projects are water efficient. So from the first project onwards, the learnings I've carried forward and sort of nurtured, improved over the years. And any project, be it mid-segment, low budget, whatever it is, we have all those principles implemented in that project.
Actually, that's a great thing, right? So localized. Even in Bangalore, if you see, North Bangalore to South Bangalore is a difference in water. When Bangalore runs out of water, the last drop of Bangalore water will run out on Kanapura. So if you're living in Devanhalli, you'll be out of water much before the last drop goes out, right? Which means we have to localize. So that's one of the challenges we have, right? And I just want to highlight one thing. All of you are here, but I thought it's good to get some numbers. Do you have any idea what is the expected growth in India? By 2035, we are slated to build anywhere between 78 to 100 million new houses in a country, which is like 5x more than any other country doing. China is only one comparable in that size. Now, why is this important? Let's take Bangalore context. We are in Bangalore, we are doing this event also for Bangalore. Bangalore population today is 14 million, 14.1 million. The prediction by the government by 2031 April is we'll be a 20 million city. Which means each year from now we'll have 1 million people coming in. And today, from water, like you said, we are about 55 to 60% of the daily need of the water comes from Kaveri and Vishabhavati river. That's all. The rest of the water is has to either come from the ground or what we've collected as treated water to be used. So, goal for a Bangalore project in terms of a green building should be water conscious. This is a great. Right? So from you hear developers come and ask you to build, right? Do they actually have the knowledge or intellect to then say this is a green building, or do they typically tell you build me a green building?
So, we used to work a lot with builders earlier, the first probably 5-10 years. I don't think they had enough knowledge in terms of what a green building should be. The only thing that they would say is, okay, can you get it certified? So that it helps them in terms of positioning it, in terms of sales or whatever, right? That's all their constraint was. I mean, can you do it? And budget should not go this much. I think there were just 2 things.
Hey, can you do a thing? With that, one of your projects, I was single planet, but you had another project in mind.
Yeah.
Can you explain some of your experience going through that? And this is what, some age-old, 8 years old project.
So this is not a builder project. Of course, it's Puma. It's Puma retail on Indranathan 100 feet low. But of course, now it's gone through some renovation. And the good thing was the client was not an Indian. It actually helped. Because from a retail perspective, I'm not talking about a general perspective, from a retail perspective, when the client comes in and says, I just want to maximize my sales. I don't want to spend even 1 rupee more than what a retail building should cost. I just want to maximize my sales. That's it, right? But because the initiative was from the headquarters, their initiative was, it has to be beyond lead, is what their term was.
Beyond lead is a definition of their green building.
Their green building. That it cannot just be lead. We've chosen India for a reason. We want this to be like a statement for the whole world. Saying retail can be next lead. They just didn't want beyond lead, they wanted retail to be next lead. And this was their first in India, that was a startup also.
But you were already very conscious.
They were already
very sustainable in their
So they were very clear.
Yeah.
And Germans also, they made clear.
Very clear, yeah.
There's no confusion, right? So that was good, and they had a combination and they won it and all that. And what we did over there, of course, budget was still a constraint, but not to that extent. They were okay as long as we made sense.
Right.
We had to prove that it's worth spending that little extra, 5% or 10%, because this was 8
So they
years.
were asking for tangibility.
Tangible.
They were saying, if you're saying this much green,
Yeah.
what will it cost?
Yes.
What is the value?
What is the ROI?
Right.
How many years will I take to get it? So they were very clear about that. So in the competition, without them asking, knowing they're German, we put all those things. Whereas the other architects at that time were not thinking like that. They were just showing it as green. We had all the numbers in place, plus the alternate way of thinking. So, of course, when we started, some of the things that we did, because it's a small site, it's easier to do in a larger site. Like a builder site, it's easier. This was probably 60 by 100. It's not even big, right? And then so we still wanted net zero. It's not easy. And you're not offsetting. There's zero offset.
See, that's a key part, and we'll get to that. What does offset fit into it? So yeah, you didn't offset, you did everything
Yeah.
sustainable and made in net zero.
Yeah.
So what was the definition of net zero?
So whatever they needed in terms of energy, it was being generated.
Energy was yes.
So first, we had a roof constraint. We can't put solar from one end to the other end. It's on the large space. We have only that much. So we calculated backwards, saying this is all we can generate. Now what do? We can't, normal building, you need much more than that, right? And we asked the neighbor to rent his terrace so we can put some solar. We tried
That
it.
is fantastic. Community.
No, he didn't agree. So that,
he didn't agree.
No, he didn't agree. We tried.
Yeah.
He didn't agree. So then what do? So then we said, okay, but you can't compromise business. So the entire south or west or whatever is full glass. Because you can't say, okay, I'm doing a rebuilding, I'm going to put a wall because there's west facade and now we'll just add solar. No, can't be done like that. So we had full glass. Sales was not compromised. That was non-negotiable. Like the visibility and all. All the other sides is what we could do. So then we said, okay, let's do earth data. And that time nobody knows how to do earth data. Rehaul is too expensive. Even though it's German, they
Right.
said forget it, they're not spending for
That much
rehaul
money, yeah.
over here. So we had regular basic plumbers do the earth data
Right.
system for us under 2 basements. And we said, what will happen? Worst case, if it doesn't work, it's not a big amount. It's a couple of lakhs.
So they're willing to spend it.
We said, this is your, that's when I say architects should be taught negotiation skills. Right? We're not taught. So we are learning every day how to negotiate. So we said, okay, you either spend on rehab and you guaranteed result, or you spend this, which is hardly anything. Even if you lose, what do you lose? But if you gain, you get 10x. So this is the explanation we gave them very clearly upfront.
So the thing is, the client was also up, and right at the top was very keen on winning. Yeah.
They wanted it. That's it. So we did that, and they didn't have to turn on AC for 9 months in a year. I mean, which retail building with entire glass and not turning on AC? You'll not see it in Bangalore even today after 8 years. You'll not see it. It worked because Bangalore climate was good.
Right. Yeah, we have ACs on, please don't worry.
So the differential that we had to create was not much. If outside is 32 and once it goes inside, it comes back at 26. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Right? 6 degrees differential, you can do it.
So, but 8 years ago, you could explain that level of science
Yes.
to say this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Differential. So that was all without technology. Because none of the consultants at that time, I was telling Sriram, I said we hired one, we would ask him to leave. We hired one, we would ask him to leave. Because nobody was willing to go that extra mile like how he does now, right? I can have 100 conversations with him and say, can we do it? But at that time, nobody was willing, Sriram, to say, can you calculate this for me?
Right.
I want the differential. Can you calculate it home? They were not ready. And there was no tech to calculate it, except in the US it was there. So we done the research. We said, this is the tech that you can use to calculate. Can you use it? They were not ready. Even IGBC was not ready to understand the differential. So that was just one. But of course, apart from that, it was design. It was basic hot air rises up, So we suspended the whole bidding, like one question that you said, construction waste, right? We said retail keeps changing every 5 years. We cannot have it fixed, the slabs fixed. Because a landlord wanted something, we wanted something else as a statement, right? So we suspended 2 floors from the top, so there was gap all around, so hot air could just rise up.
So the earthly tunnel would bring in the air from the bottom. So all your diffusers are on the floor. And after that, it just rises. We had one exhaust on the top, so it would just rise. And after 5 years, if they really want to change everything, all they have to do is just remove the suspension and put whatever they want as full slab. If the landlord wants to take the building back and rent into somebody else, they won't probably want that. It's a waste of space, that much area less. That's where the retail thing comes up. Okay, I'm losing 1,000 square feet because you've cut it off. But otherwise, we couldn't have done it as net zero. Because we wanted all the system to just work like how an old building would work. So that's where the history comes in, the culture comes in, the traditional technology comes in, and then we just combine it with today's day and age aesthetics and the materials we use. We design every single piece of furniture for that. So to the point that you break it apart and say, okay, this is the laminate, this is the wood, this is the leg. How do we relook at the laminate? How do we look at the adhesive? How do we look? So we created an entire book that Puma could use going forward to make sustainable furniture as well, whatever they display inside. So it was a lot of work, but I think it was one of the best projects because the conversations we had with the client is what makes it, happen or it can break otherwise.
I thank you for that. Actually, if you have not been to, I recommend you to go to not just this store. I've been to Puma stores in other countries also. Puma is truly sustainable. They have shoes made with wasted plastic and all that. So, true to their thing. Yeah. Thank you. So, I thought
I have a point.
Please.
Well, the original question was, do builders come and ask you what really your knowledge on that?
Right.
So I have a different take on that. So any large developer who has a commercial play definitely knows what a green building is.
Right.
But he just doesn't do it in residential. So how can you break it down for him that it's not going to cost him money
Right.
to do that green building, even residential? So the reason they do it in commercial is they are maintaining the property, they own the property, and they reap the benefits of doing a rebuilding. Not just that the client demands a rebuilding, that's the primary reason they do it. But they also save in maintenance, they also save in electricity charges, but they don't apply the same logic in residential. Simply because they don't own it post handover.
True.
So I have learned along the way that if you do a rated green building or platinum, if you go above and beyond, it's costly. But if you're just doing a platinum rated green building and you start planning right from day one, it's going to actually cost you lower to do a green building than more expensive. I think plan it right.
So that's a good.
That's the data people like you can break it down for larger developers because they know what a green building is. They just don't have the willingness to do it in residential.
Yeah. Actually, that's a good point. But I didn't feed him ahead saying that's why we need Sriram, that's why we need Swanand. Coming from his heart. So, what will help is in that life cycle, CNS, Northern Star is a great project where you had to go through some of these decisions, and you were constantly looking at what does it mean. So, in the life cycle, from once the definition was done, how did you do? Can you? So, Northern Star is a project CoEvolve has done. Let's talk about it. I'll just introduce the project. It's a perfect size project to understand the challenges of sustainability. Also see good value of it. 132 apartment community in North Bangalore was awarded by World Green Building Council as the greenest residential project in Asia Pacific zone. And we have had the chairman of the Resident Welfare Association call and say, last year when Bangalore was dry, saying that my neighbors are buying 10 tankers a day, I'm only buying 3 tankers a day, thanks to you guys, right? So, I'm setting this up. So, Suhail will tell us a nice story about how CNS was done and some of the challenges he has faced. So, good.
Yeah, so this project was on the drawing board in around 2015-16. That was the time when Cape Town ran out of water, and the news was Bangalore was next in line, World War to run out of water. So from the get-go, and this was our second green building, our design brief was clear to all the stakeholders that water is the primary subject that we're targeting to design for. But unfortunately, we did not have good enough consultants who were able to help. So we had to sort of deep dive and do our own site research to get things going. That's a different story, but we wanted to make it the most greenest platinum rated building in the country. And we got it also. I mean, it was the highest rated point at that point in time. We scored over 91 points on HBC for that project. But we had a lot of challenges along the way. So, Sriram always pushed me that don't look at cost, you should implement anything that is really. I always say I'm a very practical developer. I mean, I will not go and spend 10 times the cost just to make it clean. If it's going to give me back 2x, 3x of what I invest, I will do it. But I push the boundaries to make that happen in terms of cutting down costs to implement that. For example, in a previous project, my first green building, there is something called heat island effect, which IGBC gives you points for. And this was back in 2012. The only way that they would give points for a heat island effect at that time was you have to lay China tiles on the rooftop of the building, which has high solar effectivity. And we had a genius consultant on board that time. He said, that's a total waste of money. You have no utility except for sort of making it whatever IGBC wants to make it. Then he started doing some research and he came up with a product called CoEvolve, which has a better reflectivity index than China tiles also. So we went back to IGBC and said, I'm just going to lay this on the roof. I'm not going to do your China tiles. They said, no, nothing doing. We kept arguing. Then we said, we'll implement it. And then you come back and tell us whether you accept it or not. Then he started doing further research and he told us that if you sort of put growing media in this, you can do a farm on that. So then we started looking at vendors who roof garden. And their cost at that time was something like 500, 600 per square feet, which was not making sense for them. So we broke it down to layers, went and bought every layer from different vendors. And we did the 500 rupee product at 70 rupees. So that's how we were sort of pushing the boundaries to make things happen so that it makes financial sense for us. So if there is a solution, we try and break it down to suit our finances as well.
But you had always to make these design decisions. And once you got the cost benefit analysis, then you could get an engineering of it. Engineering is the second part. The first is to understand what is the impact and what is the cost. Right? That's one thing you concentrate.
Correct, yeah.
Right?
That's apart from sustainability.
Yes.
I mean, I had a mentor called Hariharan of BCI.
Yes.
He always says that sustainability first starts with saving money.
Right.
You first save money, then you look at everything else. If you're not saving money, you cannot do sustainability.
Anybody from IGBC here? Great, we do some IGBC bashing here, but so you're right. So Hari was great in that sense. If you do not know, BCIL was one of the they were the ones who kicked off the idea of urban housing, which is very sustainable. I looked up to them quite a bit. So did Suhail and many of us. So he helped in CN. So when you started making this design, I think it would be great if you shed some light on how water and how much money you saved in doing water play.
So again, along the way, we had to do STPs, like the package say that you would do an STP. And we had a basement with this project. The rule says STP should be below basement. And we encountered hard rock. So at a point, we still had to go, and the STP, that's like 6 meters and above. And it was very expensive for us to dig further to get that depth. Then we started searching for more vendors who could sort of give us a shorter depth STP, and that's where we stumbled upon Brigade Reap and the Eco STP project that Brigade Reap was sort of mentoring. And that was, and we were the first customers for them. So we started talking to Eco STP. Our MVP consultant would not accept them. That's where Sriram's joke of talk to us comes in. So either you accept it or you get out. Because I like the product. I'm willing to take a risk and try it. So I, in fact, installed it during construction, used it for my labor shed, because I knew there was a chance of failure. So if it failed, I wanted to give enough time for myself to demolish it and do a regular STP. So during construction, for a year and a half, labor shed and sewage was treated on this, and I was convinced, and we went ahead with that. So that was the first installation even for Eco STP.
Today, Eco STP is more than 320 installations across the country. The first one was done there across the country. BBC covered their work. We work closely with their BUs in many of our projects. It's an incredible natural STP, and now there's 6 more. We're not pitching extra for Eco STP. There's 6 more natural STPs in the market. But the choice of making the decision, of course, from a sustainability was.
First, I mean, that's the challenge which I had with the consultant, where they would not accept innovative ideas, would not see it through and stuff. So, not just them. When we went to PCP, the moment I see eco, they start getting irritated. So that was another challenge I had. But then when I finished the project, the PCP came and saw it. They gave me a 10-year, it's called consent for CFO. So they gave me a 10-year CFO for that thing, and they wanted me to come and talk about that to other players and stuff. And in fact, now they have an Eco STP in their office in Church Street. The STP is an Eco STP in the PCP office in Church Street.
They explained it really well. PCB finally agreed. So you should also talk about the challenge of the sizing which where PCB was installing.
Signing off.
The sump and all. Because of water efficiency, you brought it down from 135 to 100, right?
So with a lot of, I think there's low-hanging fruits in water, which is aerators are the easiest way to reduce your water consumption. So with Sriram, we sort of brought down our consumption by about 60% or so. I think we need 1 lakh liters a day. We brought it down to roughly 40,000 liters. One is through design of using aerators and other plumbing fixtures, and then through recycling. We also did, so the water that came out of STP, we went through an 8-stage filtration process to make it potable. And we fed it back for everything except drinking. So even bathing was with recycled water in that project. But that's another story. I'll get into that later. So with that, we brought it down from 1 lakh to 40,000 liters, and we had water meters installed. Like Sriram told the story of the president calling. We ran that community for about 2 years, and we targeted 65% actually. And at full capacity, we were able to bring it down to about 40 to 43,000 liters a day. We targeted 35, we reached about 42,000 from 1 lakh. So successfully the consumption was brought down. And like he said, in last year, summer was one of the worst in terms of water. And there were just 3 tankers a day, which is roughly 40,000 liters. So that's the water bit over there. But the challenges along the way were consultables, PCB, all of these things. So with Eco STP, the challenge with them is the construction cost is double or triple of a conventional STP. But for me, because I did not have to dig another 3 meters, I straight away was break even when I started Eco STP. So my cost to dig that sort of hard rock for 3 meters was more than the cost of building the Eco STP. So it was break even for me. So again, that's the financial side I come to.
Yeah, I was going to open the financial side, but I want to stop for a second. Both of them spoke about 2 very successful projects. Anybody has any questions to ask them? Be happy to do that before we go to the next section.
What about your rainwater harvesting?
So in Northern Star, rainwater harvesting was very conventional. Whatever PCB asked for, MOA asked for, put 100 pins and connect it. That was the only thing. I did not focus much on going deep into that. So whatever they asked for, we did that. But towards the fag end of that project, I found another vendor who was able to disrupt what happens under the groundwater also. But in that project, I couldn't do it. But I'm working on it with 2 other projects now where a lot of hi-fi tech he uses in satellite mapping to sort of map out the entire subsurface aquifers and ensure that I recharge in the aquifers that are going to feed into my borings within that space. So that's something I'm working on now. But that project I could not do much more than just the conventional pits that they do. So the issue with the conventional STP, rainwater pits in Bangalore is that Bangalore soil does not percolate water to an extent that is required to reach your aquifers below. If you fill up a recharge pit, after a week also you may still have half of the pit full of water. So they don't consider that unscientifically. They say if it's 1 acre, they say you put 20 pits. That's the only guideline they say. So that's something which has to also be mainstreamed with terms of subsurface mapping and satellite mapping of.
And I think that's happening now across the country, but Bangalore is again leading the way. Work on mapping the subsurface water because we know how much dependent we're going to be on it. That's something you should reach.
You talk about solar. Actually, we work with a solar company for AMC, and we have seen the problem is not household and all that. Problem is economically better option. So as soon people want to invest in utility scale, not they're very happy to invest. They want to invest in community, not they want to invest in utility scale, not because return is very good. Same like in solar stock market, return is so good that everyone to want to buy today's stocks, energy company stocks. But they don't want to have after home because economically at that scale, the return is very, very late which they get. So rather than the sustainability is one of the reason, economical sense is the biggest reason why the people are not going for this thing. We have seen and done the survey in most of the region. As soon you go for the community farms, they want to invest. They want to go for solar because they know the advantage is very quick. They will get compared to the home one. So that's one of the reasons. Second, what we have seen is we are seen one of the combination was some breed buildings. They have done one conference with what they are doing. They are studying old buildings of Delhi NCR, which is like which is built by the Mughals and all that, and studying their patterns that they are still cooler compared to our buildings, which has a huge cement and all the problems. So they are doing the 3D mapping of them and then studying them how we can create a new homes like that.
Right.
Rather than putting more AC, why don't we have more windows? That's the option. And third, we are already working with National Cement Council of Building Material, which is actually using plastic into cement now. So the problem is, as soon as you take plastic, you don't know which level of moisture is there. As soon as you put that in cement, whole cement can go back. So that's a problem that we have seen that actually the problem is there. The government is not having everything on their hand. There is some natural problem which we have to face. So that's my question. How you think that, how we can make it more economically feasible for the people who want to install solar, so that rather than this sustainable choice, it can be one of the best economical choices.
So we did the Karnataka Power Corporation, the ones who generate power for the state. So we've done 3 of their projects over here, over 10 years. So probably met every single MD, kept changing, right? Nobody stays. And Karnataka government always is changing, so the MD would also change because the power is the main control that they have. So we've had multiple conversations over the years of why can't we make it a network society, like you said. So each individual house doesn't have to invest it on their own, but there are enough public buildings. We in fact even mapped it for Jayanagar and JP Nagar and said these are all the government or public buildings that we can invest, you can invest and put solar over there, and then that can be sent to the houses, right? And also it's a network society because the houses operate usually in the night and the offices operate in the morning. So it's common sense. It's not even a no-brainer. But the policy decisions, it's the same thing for water. They mapped it and said, okay, these are all the public buildings. We can create huge sums in these public buildings where there are parking lots. You're not disturbing the parking, you're just using the underground of that and creating rainwater, huge rainwater sums. So you're not dependent on the water coming from somewhere else to the city. You can collect it at multiple locations. So we've had this conversation with BWSSB, with PESCOM, with KPTCL, KPCL, many conversations. Even today, he will probably know better. KPCL is not the bigger investor in Karnataka for solar. It's the private players, unfortunately. It's really unfortunate.
It is today, but it will change over
It
the
will
next
change,
decade.
yeah.
Government is, the grid is going to go renewable, even if I'm the PM Midla.
It has to. There is no other, because that's the only thing that is infinite, right? Everything else is finite. But luckily, they wanted their own building, that's their office building in Palace Road, to be an example for all government green buildings across the country. Even today, it's a 2.5 lakh square feet, no AC is turned on. G+8 floors, complete corporate office that we did interiors, exterior, everything, the whole thing. No AC is turned on. And in the same budget. In fact, they save more than what we calculated. When you calculate, you have to show that AC is turned on. So with calculation, it comes to 40% reduction.
Meghana, actually, that's a great example. No? Can you, and thanks for this question, because I want to build on that. There are these myths about what is a green building. I just feel like people take a very wrong notion. Like I was joking, I'll plant 50 trees and it's a green building, right? What are some of the myths people have when they start designing buildings?
First myth is, any tree that you plant is good. It's not.
Any tree is not correct.
Yeah, there is no common sense in it. You just plant a tree and that tree probably, like eucalyptus, I think, right? It absorbs so much more water that the kilometers and kilometers radius around it will lose water because this is like a sink. I mean, it's just expands, so it absorbs so much. So it's a notion that any landscape, any tree you put, it's okay. So that's the first notion. Second notion is that, if your metrics are only with numbers, it's not green, personally, for me. I'll tell you why. Like, let's say, in a residential building, right? If we do a residential building, we may not go for subdivision, it's expensive. But I think a lot of residential buildings can be planned to be the most sustainable because that's where you inculcate the values of sustainability. And that is taken forward across in all buildings because they make the right decisions. So if your residential buildings are sustainable, I think automatically all the other things become sustainable. So that's another myth that residential doesn't have to be commercial, has to be because you're getting money out of it. That's the second thing. And the third thing, people always forget which is the largest or most expensive cost per square foot investment in a building. Can you just guess? Most expensive cost per square foot for any building, to run any building, any office.
HVAC. HVAC.
Yes. The salaries we pay people. Right. So we start from there. When we speak to a person, a client or whatever, we start from there. Saying there's no comparison between what you spend on AC and what you spend on salaries for a building. And the salaries is every year after year, it's only increasing. Right. So
Don't tell my team that.
So if we can even make them perform 2x, that's it. 2x, right? And for somebody to perform, what do you really want in a building? And that is green, right?
Right.
You feel good coming back to that space. You can just, all you want is just to see the sky, at least few hours in a day. And the materials, the colors, the space, the openness. And you know that your building is responsible in terms of its saving water, rainwater harvesting is there, solar is there. If all these things you see around you and you feel good coming back to the space, you feel energetic, you feel vibrant, I think you've got the sustainability right.
Mm-hmm.
That is sustainability.
So that's actually good, right? Because one of the theme was about defining what is green building. I want to change. I mean, we can talk for 2 more hours. My team is raising eyebrows here and they're saying time. One more question. Sorry.
One question for us, man. I think some of these that you mentioned are very non-tangible kind of numbers. Productivity, days. I don't think you can justify and say, hey, this is what you're giving it. And that's one thing I want you to ask. How you kind of this ROI notion of I invested in sustainability and getting this. Where does all those not tangible things or awareness, or is there some science through?
So there's a science. There's a science to the madness, right? And that's why I keep telling Sriram, whatever you develop, it cannot be only metrics. It has to have emotional quotient built into that system. There are certain things that we all agree upon as human beings. That is non-tangible, yes. But we still know that it is, we agree on it, right? And we can put a quality, we can put a metrics to it. And why can't that be built into it? Built into the system so that across, because scalability is the biggest thing, like you said, the way we are growing, the only way to do it is through tech. So if this can be built into it, anywhere anybody sitting across like he's developing whatever the platform he is, if this can also come into it, saying, okay, have you considered this, this and this? What is the rating that you can give for this? Simple rating. Am I getting a view? That is there in IGBC, but what kind of view?
Right.
You can't just say a view, but what kind of view? Can that be built into it? Am I, the emotions, there's a tangibility to it. Again, you know what architecture plays on what emotion. What makes you sad? What makes you happy? We know all that. That's all, you can put it together. 70% only we can get it right. 30% is always interpretation, but 70% you can. We all agree upon 70%. Why can't that be built in? That is not even there in any of these systems, which is why I don't believe in certification. Especially when we design apartments. I think some of the apartments that we designed personally, not because I've designed it, I just find those people so much more happier because they're like, simple thing, right? You've taken care of where I'm going to put my clothes, where I'm going to put my machine. That is also sustainability, because otherwise if you don't do it, then they're breaking something. Yeah. Then you're losing material, you're wasting material because you've not thought how people live, how people walk, how people talk, how people think. we just don't think about all these things. If you think about it, there's less wastage and people are just happier. If they're happier, they perform better.
I want to add on the certification part. One second. In fact, I believe there are multiple certification systems in the country globally. Certifications add a huge value in. They've added a huge value in mainstreaming building sustainability. They cannot be your North Star. They should be a validation to what you have learned. What I would say, it's like an age-old thing, right? You study to learn the subject, you write the exam to pass it. But if you study to pass the exam, then how much you learn is a question. It's the same thesis here. If you design really well, a building will perform really well, the data will naturally get your certification. We have multiple clients, developers we work with where 75% of design, once it's completed, then they say, do you think we should go for certification? And we are also fine. We say, let's go for it then. But the best thing IGBC lead, every one of these things have done. I'm not speaking just because the logo is here, but genuinely I believe that they've all mainstream sustainability, made it easy for everybody to understand, to talk and, attest to saying something is sustainable. But that cannot be your driving to build sustainability. That's one clarity on certification. Sangeeta had a question.
We talked about, we spoke about water, preserving water, lowering temperature in the buildings and stuff. Now there are construction materials that are there, which will reduce the use of water, because a lot of water goes in during construction. Right? I mean, you see tanker loads of water, and I keep saying, oh my God, we don't have drinking water, and there are buildings using up the water. But what do you think about using materials, construction materials, that will save water, that will reduce, the temperature within buildings, make it thermally insulating? What do you think of, since you're into residential? Commercial is pretty easy, I feel, but the residential, make people accept the fact that you're not using hardcore concrete, but you're using something else which will be better and serve the same purpose. What do you know?
So I'll answer your water part of it. What I do in my buildings, beyond let's say concrete, post my structure completion, I do not have any water for my either mixing or curing, for most of it except for washing the apartment and stuff. So we have found chemicals that can replace the requirement of curing. Every activity in construction site needs curing. So post starting from plastering onwards, except for the mixing of the mortar itself, I don't use water, right up till handing over. It's only the washing that requires water later on, and housekeeping also. So that's what I've done. But about people, perceptions, I would say they're not literate enough. They, at least crowd in Bangalore, want a good house, what's their word. But if you go to a different geography, for example, Chennai, they're very concerned with every single thing that you use. But not so in Bangalore. So it depends on the geography that you're catering to. So in Bangalore, you have a very cosmopolitan culture. And they look at your final, say, this is a completed house. So what's here, is everything good here? Is everything top notch? That's what they're concerned about. What goes behind, you may have 5% of the people bothered about what's happening during construction. So there is a lot of scope of innovation in a city like Bangalore. But you should be specific to the geography that you're catering to.
I want to one second in the intro. So here's the rest of the afternoon, then you can see. But one thing I want to talk about is in terms of material, right? I'm going to put somebody here on the spot. We have a good partner of ours, Sarah Jacob is here. In her project in Kochi, the reason I'm picking it up, not just because she's here or she won an award last week, but because she's built a project in Kochi where she pushed the boundaries on material usage and definition of green building. You're talking, right, about every project, every location has its own definition of green building. In her project, the definition we concluded was net zero combined, which made sense for Kochi. Sarah, like I said, I'm going to put you on spot. 30 seconds, please talk about that project and what you've done, why material choosing, the challenges. There's some fantastic material companies in front of us, and Sangeeta and Harsh.
So. I did see Sangeeta and I recognized her from the IF days. So first of all, thank you, Sriram. All of this was with your support and help. And Suhail, I've always been inspired by the work that Suhail has done. So we wanted to do something beyond, something different, like you all said, and something that's more meaningful. So in terms of the materials we want to, we went in for a net zero energy in the common area. We did the solar, but we also went and found out that there could be solar grids from the KSCB itself, which there can be an added, so you are taking a renewable energy. And that was from the energy aspect, and the material aspect, you are using mud panels, using tiles like carbon cloth. So all of this has embodied carbon, which is very less, and that made a difference. And I think it did well. Yeah, that's about it.
I just want to know what panels opinion about usage of ISMC structure. Recently, I had with the Institute of Science, there are two new verdicts of piece of 10 with so in terms of the sustainability and in terms of the reliability and in terms of the recyclability and cost.
Right. One question. So I want to also know this question, and we can see this.
I wanted to check on what exactly, if we go to concept of sustainability, about 100% green building, what is the cost per square feet for your project that you did on the in North Bangalore, the Medicine Law?
Anybody else? Any other question? So we'll see if there's anything clubbing. Okay. Anyway, there are great sandwiches and coffee. So please, I think one is for you, one is for him.
It comes to design. What is the cost for designing a green building? One. What is per square feet cost to get a project there? With 100% sustainability, not by just planting trees, but using these techniques which you just told us.
So this was a project done. It was working.
Yeah.
It was a project probably on the drawing board in 2016-17, and back then for that project, my overall extra cost was 9%. Was my extra cost, but post completion, my project got delivered at the time of COVID, and when the lockdown opened up, I got a huge markup in Indra. So I would attribute, let's say I spent 2,000 rupees on my cost of construction. I always spent 50 to 100 rupees extra, 100 rupees extra on sustainability. But I got a 500 rupee extra price because of that 100 rupees I spent.
So he spent roughly 85 rupees per square feet extra. I have a little more detailed number. 85 rupees he spent, but he sold close to 350 or 400.
So I'll just give you a number. So I was selling, before lockdown, and I was selling at 5,000 rupees. Once the market opened up, in about 3 months I was selling at 7,500. And I just attributed 500 rupees, could be a lot more. But after 2,500 that went up, I started giving 20% credit to sustainability.
And actually you can see that's because if you go to that project website, there's an entire page only about sustainability. Yes. And there's lots of numbers there, right? And it will be over in the numbers. That's why.
So it's around 2,500 rupees per square feet for that particular project? No.
2,100.
2,100.
But that's back then. Today the costs are very different. And if I do the same building today, I would probably save 100.
With the experience that you have.
Experience.
You don't have to test and try now because you already done.
Experience plus technology, newer products have become cheaper. A lot of these, say, carbon negative or close to zero carbon products are now coming at almost par cost of existing products. So your cost of going sustainable is actually cheap if you start from the get-go. If you're planning it, you can actually deliver it cheap.
If you want to decarbonize, now there are a couple of companies I should talk to them. Decarbonize, as you rightly said, it's become cheaper in that sense. There's a material on par with the market price you get. Shout out to a bunch carbon stronger companies here. In fact, we're testing in one of his projects also. You'll get it at on par.
There's another one called Recyclex.
There are enough companies, and when Sharat shows the platform, you will see, we'll show you a bunch of these how to make the choices. So you won't answer this question. It's about the carbon material used, stabilizer.
Usage of concrete, ASMC structures, and the other for the
instead of steel structure.
Instead of concrete structure. And
it's critical because for us to understand, 80-85% of embodied carbon of a building is concrete, steel, and cement. So reduction in that and alternatives is always very good for.
So I think the residential space, we are still a long time away from adopting ISX structures. In commercial, yes, I mean, not commercial, I would say retail, it's more around.
Also, independent houses is probably.
Independent houses also, but in multi-story buildings, I think India is far away from going to ISMC. But what's now an alarming trend is the aluminium formwork construction, which I'm sort of totally against because of the heat gain aspect of that. And that's something I've been asking Sriram's team to push and see how you can reduce the heat gain by the envelope. But I don't think ISFC is going to be a big player in residential.
So I just so today, because of a lot of the land value has gone up very high, so a lot of old residences cannot do concrete above, and single family is becoming double family, right? And they're not going on. So a lot of the old houses we're renovating, we're using steel, not because we want to use it, but because there is no other choice. So we're using steel construction for many of the old houses, and cost is definitely higher than a regular construction. And labor who do steel construction and fabrication is not very good. So we face, because for factories we get excellent people to do fabrication for large projects, right? But the same teams will not come for a small house. So there are a lot of challenges in that. So more than a green perspective, more than a thing perspective, there is no choice. So we are using steel projects for that.
A lot of time saving.
Time saving, I don't think it is there for a residence, but it's there when we do a multi-story project. Because then there are multiple slabs, so you save time. But if you're doing a G+1, the people will just come and say, okay, people say we're going to save time. I'm like, how? There's only one slab. How does it matter? In fact, I'm waiting a lot of times for the fabricator to come. Whereas a mason, a masonry, you get anywhere. And you're done with the work. And there is no correlation. The joinery between where the steel comes and the work comes is always nightmare because they never get it right. So there's no saving. But if you do a factory, of course there is saving, right? Because we're doing it much faster. Larger projects, we're doing prefab. So it all depends on where, what, why, and how. No, it's based on that decision more than that.
I'm going to bring it back full circle as we wrap up. First of all, thank you, Meghana and Suhail, for this. But, coming back full circle as to the how and the defining green, there's also a why. I think, why do you want to do sustainable, right? For the measure of environmental impact, as myopic as it is greenhouse gases and carbon footprint. We use the term carbon footprint, greenhouse gases. Construction industry is responsible for nearly 40% of the global environmental impact. Just for us to gauge, right? 2023, our carbon footprint globally was 37 billion tons. And for you to get a gauge of how much because what does it mean? 37 billion tons means what, right? So just to get a gauge, I travel once or twice a year out of country and about, let's say, 10 or 12 flights domestic in a year and let's say 20 train. This is the big ticket items. And then I'm vegetarian, local, I take metro, etc. My carbon footprint, and my team mocks me that I'm the highest in my team, is about 10.5 tons. After this kind of a life, mine is 10.5 tons. So now imagine when we say the global thing is 37 billion tons. The last data point is for 1 ton, assume I need to plant 8 trees. 8 mature trees in a year can mitigate 1 ton of carbon. So for me, it's already 80, 90 trees. Now imagine the scale of the work. So why is this important for the construction industry? Because 40% construction industry can do. So it's not a beating of the architects and consultants, the developers, but it's a huge opportunity for them to set right what, for example, my generation has set wrong. I look at this as an opportunity for built environment. So I'm going to ask Satya, put you on spot, sorry, as to why did you choose to build green? Your first project, you're thinking of making a net zero sustainable project.
So we are coming up with as we are a new builder. I want to stand out from others. So this can be one of my identity for the brand that I'm trying to pay. And I feel by 2030, most of the builders will actually follow these traditions, and this will be one. I'm hoping a lot of government policies also will come in by that time. And I was actually reading one of the materials saying that government is actually working a lot on the strategies that that the people will get on loan paths or subsidies for the builders who are using this green concept in their construction. So that is one of the things I want to be away from other builders, the new concept of sustainability.
So you see it as an opportunity, you see it as a responsibility, you think, and I'm going to put a word into your lexicon saying also the right thing to.
As you get, making money is when you talk about sustainability, right? Yeah. So it should work both the ways.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's good. I
want to add one point. I mean, he was talking about policy, but if you are a responsible builder, you should build even irrespective of policy.
Exactly, I agree. So, in fact, I would say innovation happens despite of policy. Innovation does not happen because of policy. Policy can mainstream. That's all policy can do. But we need policy, no question about it. All right, we can keep talking for a couple of hours. But like I said, there are good sandwiches there. We need to take a break. Thank you, Meghana. Thank you, Suhail, for this. It was very useful for me.